Over 11 days in May 2024, I travelled overland by ferry and train from Kiel in Germany to the four continental Scandinavian capitals of Oslo, Copenhagen, Stockholm and Helsinki. From the fjords of Norway, the bridges that link Denmark together, the rolling green landscapes of southern Sweden and the islands and lakes of Finland, I took the slow route round the ScandiCaps. In this episode, I start my journey exploring Kiel and the Kieler Förde before heading north through the islands of Denmark to the Oslo Fjord and the Norwegian capital. My journey starts in Kiel, today an important German city, but up until the middle of the 19th century a tentative part of Denmark through personal union under the Counts of Holstein. Today it sits halfway between Hamburg to the south and the Danish border to the north. Due to its geography at the head of a sheltered fjord, or ford in German, it's always been a vital maritime centre. The Kiel Mutiny, when German sailors from the city refused to engage the Royal Navy in the last weeks of World War I, sparked the German Revolution that led to the abdication of the Kaiser and the formation of the Weimar Republic. Scene of the sailing events in the 1936 Nazi Olympics, the city was the site of major battles at the end of World War II, as the British rushed to capture the city and its ports before the Soviets could arrive, preventing them from continuing on towards Denmark. In more peaceful times, the city has become famous both for its eponymous canal that links the Baltic and the North Sea, cutting off the need to sail 460 kilometres around the whole of Denmark and risk the storm-prone seas of the Danish Straits, and for the Kieler Förde, the world's largest sailing regatta held in the waters of the fjord and bay every June. The city once again hosted the sailing events of the 1972 Munich Olympics. Recorded history of the city begins with its founding in 1233, but before that it was a small Danish village. After being given city status by Count Adolf IV of Holstein, Kiel went on to become the capital of Holstein and was an important member of the Hanseatic League of trading cities from 1284 up until it was expelled for harbouring pirates in 1518. With the abolition of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806, the Danish king continued to rule Kiel only because of his position as the Duke of Holstein, made more tenuous when Holstein joined the German Confederation 9 years later. In 1848, Holstein, along the neighbouring county Schleswig, rebelled against Denmark, with Kiel becoming the capital of the united Schleswig-Holstein up until the Danish victory in 1850. In the 1864 Second Schleswig War, the city, along with the rest of Schleswig and Holstein, were conquered by the Austrian Empire and the Prussians in alliance with the German Confederation. The following year, King William I of Prussia relocated his Baltic Sea Fleet from Danzig, modern-day Gdansk, to Kiel. 1 year later, the province of Schleswig-Holstein was created, and just one more year after that, in 1867, the province was annexed by Prussia. In the same year, the Imperial Shipyards was established in the city. Now the premier naval city in the German Empire, the city rapidly expanded in both size and population, growing from less than 19,000 people in 1864 to over 200,000 by 1910. Much of the historic Old Kiel was levelled to allow for redevelopment of the city at the start of the 20th century, a feature that was repeated during the Second World War, with over 80% of Kiel destroyed in heavy Allied bombing raids targeting the German Navy, shipyards and port infrastructure. Starting in 1946, the city was rebuilt, becoming the seat of government of the newly created state of Schleswig-Holstein within the West German Federation, and promoted officially to state capital in 1952. Today, the city is once again an important maritime centre of Germany, with shipbuilding, submarine construction and the Kieler Förde joined by the IFM Geomar, one of the most important research institutes in the field of marine sciences. The city is also an important transport hub, with the Hauptbahnhof serving as one of the northernmost points on the German ICE high-speed rail network, as well as regular regional trains down to Hamburg and out across the state. Originally the Kaiser Wilhelm Canal, and today in German known as the Nord-Ostsee Canal, literally North Baltic Sea Canal, but more commonly known as the Kiel Canal, this important link was finished in 1895, cutting off the need to route round the top of Jutland Peninsula, saving about 460 kilometres or 290 miles on the journey, and avoiding the need to sail around the storm-prone seas of the Danish Straits. On average, 90 ships a day pass through the canal, making it one of the busiest waterways in the world. The Baltic entrance to the canal is at Holtenau on the Kieler Förde, and it was here that construction started in June 1887. Employing over 9,000 workers, it took just 8 years to construct the 98 kilometres of canal, with Kaiser Wilhelm II officially opening the canal on the 20th of June 1895 by sailing from Brunsbüttel on the North Sea to Holtenau on the Baltic. The following day, the Kaiser held a naming ceremony dedicating the waterway to his grandfather, Wilhelm I, so not as much of an ego trip as you might have first thought. Between 1907 and 1914, the canal was widened with larger locks fitted at both ends to allow battleships to pass through the canal, avoiding Denmark. Convenient if the Kaiser suddenly decided to spark a devastating war across Europe. The Treaty of Versailles required the canal to be open to all international vessels of commerce and of war of any nation at peace with Germany, whilst leaving it under German administration. In 1936, Hitler repudiated its international status, blocking other nations from using it. After World War II repairs, the canal was reopened to the world and renamed to the Nord-Ostsee Canal. Along with the canal and the trains, the city of Kiel is also a key passenger ferry port with links to Norway, Sweden and Lithuania. Each afternoon, cruise ferries depart Kiel to make their overnight journeys on the various ships of Stena Line, DFDS and Color Line. The Stena Line runs every day from Kiel to Gothenburg in Sweden, taking 13.5 hours. DFDS Lisko runs 6 days a week to Klaipėda in Lithuania, taking 21 hours. And the focus of our trip, the Color Fantasy, and its sister ship, the Color Magic, shuttle backwards and forwards every night of the year, making the 19.5-hour journey due north to Oslo. A cruise ferry is exactly what it says on the tin, a ferry that operates like a cruise line with restaurants, shops and, for a little bit extra, well-appointed cabins to make the journey considerably more comfortable than a ro-ro ferry across the English Channel. For this leg, I'd booked a 3-star cabin with ocean view and, as with any Scandinavian accommodation provider, Color Line is headquartered in Oslo, an incredibly comfy bed. At 13:58, 2 minutes ahead of schedule, and therefore catching me off guard to film the ship's horn sounding, we slipped our moorings in Kiel's Norwegian Kai and slowly sailed out into the Kieler Förde to start our 355 nautical mile journey to Norway. A journey that takes you up the 11-kilometre long Kieler Förde and out into the Baltic, past several of the main islands that make up the eastern portion of Denmark, up along the coast of Denmark and Sweden through the Kattegat and then the Skagerrak before entering the 120-kilometre long Oslo Fjorden to reach the Norwegian capital at its head. Sailing out from Kiel, you pass the many harbours, wharfs and quays of the city before reaching the end of the Kiel Canal. And, if the ferry has timed it right, you might even be able to see a ship starting or ending its transit of the waterway. Slightly further on, you reach the narrowest point of the ford as you pass the Fredriksort lighthouse, standing on a small island next to a wide sandy beach. Whilst not quite at the end of the ford, it does mark the start of a transition from the calm waters of the Kieler Förde out into the Baltic, though tonight the Baltic was almost as still as a mill pond. Just 40 kilometres on from the mouth of the Kieler Förde and well into Danish waters, we approach the first island that we are due to pass. At 52 kilometres long by 11 kilometres wide and covering 285 square kilometres, 100 110 square miles. Langeland is the 9th largest of the islands that make up Denmark. Its most notable feature being the 690 or so isolated hills, which only being low at 10 to 20 metres stand out from the surrounding flat landscape. In Danish they're called Hatbakker, or Hat Hills, and stretch in a long row across almost the whole of the island. From the hidden from us west coast of the island, there's a road bridge link across other smaller islands to the island of Fyn, home to Denmark's third largest city, Odense. From this eastern side of the island, it's just ferries crossing the Langeland belt to the 4th largest island, Lolland, from where there are road connections via the islands of Falster, 6th largest, and Borgå, 22nd, to Zeeland, largest and home to Copenhagen. 20 kilometres north of Langeland, and we reach one of the most impressive sights on this part of the trip, the Storebæktbroen, or Great Belt Bridge, technically the Great Belt Fixed Link. The link combines both bridges and tunnels to create a link between Zeeland and Fyn, with a total length of 18 kilometres and fully opened in 1998 after just 10 years of construction. Until its opening, the crossing between the two islands was only possible by ferries for both cars and trains with a journey time of around 90 minutes. Today it takes just 10 to 15 minutes depending on traffic to cross, and trains no longer have to be short enough to be rolled onto ferries. It's also meant that Denmark was able to remove a need for flights between Copenhagen and Odense. The link is made up of 2 bridges and a tunnel. The most impressive part of the structure is the near 6.8 kilometre long East Bridge, a suspension bridge which carries the road from Hasselhoff on Zeeland to the small island of Sprogø in the Channel. Sprogø was originally just 38 hectares in size, but the island was expanded to 154 hectares during the construction process, as it's also the point the railway tunnel that dives under the channel in Hasselhoff resurfaces. At its highest point, the bridge passes 254 metres above the Baltic Sea, leaving a clearance of 65 metres from even the tallest of cruise and container ships. From Sprogø, the West Bridge of the box girder design carries a road and railway lines a further 6.6 kilometres onto Fyn. This much lower bridge skirts just 18 metres above the sea and was the first part of the link to be completed in 1994, though it didn't open until the full link was completed. The first trains ran across the link on the 1st of June 1997, with road traffic following just over a year later, on the 14th of June 1998. Much like its slightly younger sibling, the Øresund Bridge that links Copenhagen to Malmö, the sheer scale of the structures is only truly appreciable when you're either on, or in our case, under the bridge, getting a real feel for the distances the structure covers. The Storebæktbroen marks the last major landmark or site of the day that is easily visible from the ship, and also, conveniently, is passed just before the start of dinner, meaning there's no sightseeing to be missed whilst eating. The following morning, and I woke up just in time to see the ship entering the mouth of the Oslo Fjorden and start its long 120-kilometre sail up to the Norwegian capital, a journey that takes about 4 hours. Initially picking our way past low islets and islands, small communities linked together by ferries across the wide expanse of the outer Oslo Fjorden, which the mouth is over 60 kilometres across. This being mid-May in southern Scandinavia, dawn was early, so there were very few people up and about on deck as we made our way north, up through the outer Oslo Fjord. Slowly more settlements, industry and signs of life appeared. There are even the morning ferries shuttling between Horten and Moss. From the outer Oslo Fjord, we pass through the narrow Drottbaksundet, where the fjord narrows to less than 2 kilometres wide, passing many small islands. Leaving the Drottbaksundet, we then pass into the inner Oslo Fjord and are now on the home stretch. More houses appear on the shores of the islands and the mainland as we sail by. Ahead of us in the distance we can just make out the skyline of Oslo, and ahead of us also sailing to the city is the DFDS ferry from Copenhagen. At Nesodtangen we pass the point where the Bunnefjord, the innermost part of the Oslo Fjorden, has been flowing on the opposite side of the headland, merges with the rest of the Oslo Fjord. It's also the point at which we're joined by the local public ferries of Oslo, another sign of our increasing closeness to the city. The towers of the town hall now visible, albeit with one under scaffolding ahead of us. The former lighthouse of Dine Fyr, now an exclusive restaurant, marks the final entrance into Oslo harbour, and as we sail past Bygdøy and its collection of museums, this leg of our journey is fast coming to end, with car passengers already being summoned to return to their vehicles. With a night in Oslo, there is time to spare to head back over to Bygdøy and visit a couple of those museums, in particular, the Fram Museum. The museum houses the Fram, the discovery ship of Norwegian explorers Fridtjof Nansen, Otto Sverdrup, Oscar Wisling and Roald Amundsen. Over 20 years from her launch in October 1892 until being retired from service in 1912, the ship helped Norway to explore more of the Arctic regions. With a specially designed hull, the ship would rise up out of the ice and float on top of the ice floes rather than being crushed by them, allowing Nansen to, unsuccessfully, look for a passage through the Arctic in an attempt to reach the North Pole. Her last journey was in the opposite direction as she sailed south to the Antarctic with Roald Amundsen and his expedition on board, an expedition which would eventually lead to Amundsen becoming the first person to reach the South Pole. On her return to Norway in 1912, the ship was put into storage and left to decay until the late 1920s when Sverdrup, Wisting and Lars Christensen started up a campaign to preserve the ship as a national monument. In 1935, the Fram Museum opened with the ship of the heart, and 89 years later, she's still here. One ship that wasn't hanging around as we left the Fram Museum in the pouring rain was the Colour Fantasy. Already cleaned, restocked and reloaded with passengers, she was on her way south back to Kiel. Day 4 of the trip and the weather had cleared up considerably with bright sunny skies, which meant it's a perfect time, in the couple of hours before the next leg, to head down to Aker Brygge to take in the views of the fjord, the fortress, and with almost perfect timing, the arrival of the DFDS Seaways, our ship for the night, on her way into Oslo from Copenhagen. Vippetankai in Oslo is the starting point for the nightly DFDS crossings to Copenhagen, with the Pearl Seaways and Crown Seaways shuttling backwards and forwards on the 19-hour sailing south to Frederikshavn at the top of mainland Denmark and then on to Copenhagen. On this trip, I'd paid the small supplement for an upgrade to the Commodore Deluxe cabin, which turned out to be bigger than many land-based hotel rooms and located directly below the bridge, with views out over the bow of the ship. The DFDS berth in Oslo are in a much more interesting part of the city from the colour line ones, with views from the ship over towards the hills above the city centre and the buildings of Aker's fortress on one side. And just behind us on the opposite side, the new Munch Museum and the city's stunning Opera House. Just before 3 p.m, the moorings were released and we gently slipped away from the quayside to start our 295 nautical mile journey south towards Denmark. And this time I wasn't going to miss the captain blasting the ship's horn. The sail back down the Oslo Fjorden was in considerably brighter weather than the sail up the previous day, so it's possible to see more of the towns and villages along the water's edge as we sailed south. We passed close by the islands of Lagoya and Aspond with their summer cottages. Before starting a sail past the islands of North and South Karlholmen, which between them form the fortification of Oscarsborg, located at one of the narrowest points of the Drottbaksundet. The main fortress was built on the southern of the two islands in 1848, but it soon turned out this was insufficient and further defences were added with several battery positions. By 1905, both islands had been developed with torpedo batteries on the northern island and further batteries on both sides of the island. On the 9th of April 1940, the fortress achieved its most important victory when, during the Nazi invasion of Norway, the fortress's gun hit and sank the flagship of a German invasion fleet, the Blücher. The mission of the invasion fleet was to seize Oslo, the government, parliament, and to take the royal family prisoner. The delay caused by sending the Blücher to the bottom of the fjord gave the Norwegian government time to evacuate both the parliament, the royal family, and the country's gold further north away from the capital, and eventually to safety in England, from where they were able to conduct the resistance against the Nazi occupiers. Today, the battle at Oscarsborg Festning is seen as Norway's greatest single achievement during the Second World War, allowing country time to preserve its money, government and royal structures. The fortress remained under the control of the army until 1957, before passing into control of the Norwegian Navy. Military activity on the fortress ended in 2002, but the site is still maintained by the Norwegian Ministry of Defence, though today it's a national fortification and open to the public to explore, including the original 1893 barracks, which are now a 4-star hotel. Beyond the Oscarsborg's fortress, it's out of the Storebæktbroen we re-enter the outer Oslo Fjord, at which point the weather took a bit of a turn for the worst, with a series of hefty showers passing through, clearing the deck of all but the hardiest of passengers and the poor high-visibility vested volunteers who were out on deck the entire journey on the lookout for dolphins and whales for a marine research project. Another beefy shower passing through a little after 9 PM was all the encouragement I needed to pull the curtains on the lashing rain and turn in for the night, hoping for better weather in the morning. And in a testament to the comfort of the bed, I slept all the way through the overnight stop in Frederikshavn. Next time, I continue my journey around the Scandinavian capitals by visiting the Royal Library Gardens in Copenhagen, take a train across the Öresund and the width of Sweden to arrive in Stockholm, before heading out into the islands of the Stockholm archipelago.